So she is a successful data professional, but her passion has always been to write. And she used her personal experiences in her writing to really tell the story. So welcome to the show, Krystal Clark.
Thank
So tell
you.
me a little bit about who you are to start with, your background. Where did you grow up? Where are you originally from?
Okay. Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. Uh, so I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and
Oh,
then um, through, I think there was a particular tough time. So my parents have kind of experienced a layoff, and so my father was able to find some work, and we landed in Omaha, Nebraska, which is where I was raised for 10 years. And he received a promotion, which took us to Dallas, Texas. And then I went back to Baton Rouge, my home grounds, for college, where I met my husband. So
oh
that's a quick backstory.
my goodness. But going from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Nebraska, that had to be a culture shock.
Tell me about it. So here's the thing about the culture shock, okay? Because there's Southern hospitality, and in the North, I don't think that exists whatsoever.
No,
So,
definitely not the same way.
okay. That was the culture shock. So, originally, well, what my parents, us as kids, we didn't, and this is the thing, kids don't get taught about race at an early age. So it wasn't a big concern with us trying to fit in of whatever. But my parents were concerned because they were like, are there even like black people up there? Because they were just concerned,
It's Nebraska. You're lucky there's any people up there.
yeah, yeah. But we went there, and yeah, there are tons. Like, we're everywhere. So that wasn't the shock for me. It was just like people calling their parents by their first names and things like that. I was like, well, I couldn't do that in my house.
Mm.
Uh, so any of my friends that came around and everything like that, I think, well, our family was the only one that had like respect. Like, everybody had to say miss, ma'am, thank you, you're welcome, all that kind of stuff. So that was the culture shock, more or less, than anything.
Wow. I love that you brought that culture with you, though. In this
Yeah.
house, we have respect.
Very much so. Very
That's
much.
cool.
Yeah.
So I know you had to go through a lot of stuff and you do incorporate that into your writing, but what was the trauma that kind of set you on this path that your life has taken?
Okay. So here's the thing. So yeah, that's good. So the generation that my parents grew up in, was very much, I mean, they went through segregation. Okay. So they went through not only segregation, but then they also went through, Reconstruction, where they started doing integration. So it was very highly racially motivated. Not to mention, at that time, there weren't a lot of women rights. And so what happens is men tend to take advantage of women, right? Where they marry these women, and then they have a ton of kids with them. And then let's say they go out and, have an affair. What is that woman going to do with these 10 kids? I mean, because this is the baby boomer time, right? They can't afford to leave. So they have to stay in these toxic marriages and environments. And I'm not saying that all of them were like that. I'm just saying that this is something that they grew up with.
Right.
And as children, seeing their mothers doing that, and the men looking at their fathers, knowing this isn't how I want to be as a father, because I'm looking at my mother. I love my mother. She shouldn't be treated like this. This is something that she deserves. So the way that my parents took to that was, as me, as their daughter, oh, we're gonna make sure that, one, you are emotionally independent, that you are career driven, okay, and that you're gonna make it whether you're with someone or not. And even if you do go with someone, you have the choice and the ability and stability to kind of be off when you can leave, and stuff like that. So part of that happened. I grew up with a lot of emotional, and this is what they call parents with emotional immaturity, because they didn't have that.
Right.
And so they couldn't bring that to me. So I had no way of expressing sadness, displeasure, or anything, because it was just go, 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 be this person. So I found a lot of that in my writing. Now, I did have a traumatic experience, and I had to research this because I was constantly going back between, like I was switching terms, sexual assault versus child abuse versus molestation, rape, all this other stuff, but actually they're all clubbed together, whether they're any of them. So in my particular case, I was molested by a family member, which happened to be a cousin that was 2 years younger than me. So I was extremely embarrassed about that because he was 2 years younger than me and I was at a young age. So you would think I should be able to be like, no, go away. Well, the way he saw me as a very strong individual. So he had to come at me at my weakest, which was during my sleep. So I would wake up to this. I hid this from my parents for quite some time. And, obviously, time went on, and about at ninth grade, I was borderline suicidal. I was very depressed because all of this was just building up inside of me, as well as me being the oldest and having to watch out for my little brother. And I had all these strict things imposed on me. And I had told my mom. And in that moment of telling my mother, um, I didn't, I kind of felt she would react the way she did, but you know how you feel that, but you don't want that. And then when it happens, it really hurts. And I didn't feel like she really had my back, neither her or my father. And so they had given me a choice to really say, hey, okay, we got it all, we have it handled, we have it under control, which they didn't. We've addressed it. Do you want them to stay or go? And it's like, why would you ask if someone who's touching me inappropriately, you're still willing to raise him? So you love him more than me is what I took from that. Okay. And so I clammed up. I became this introvert. I mean, I wanted to change my identity. I wanted to do everything I could do just to forget about this. And so anyhow, I got to college and I started to cope with that by alcoholism. Then my body started to reject alcohol, which thankfully, I mean, that is a blessing. But at that time, I struggled with my faith because the way I looked at it was like, God, you put me through some shit. Okay. And I apologize, but you put me, I was like, I've been through this. Like, I've been through something. And this alcohol was the one thing that I could count on that I knew could take away all that pain. I knew it. And I feel like you're taking it from me. And I didn't really, in the process of that, I started struggling with my faith. And I didn't realize until later on that he was setting me on a path on a journey to experience quite a bit more. And I needed to grow into this. I needed to experience all of these things because this book that I wrote encapsulates all of those things that I went through. This book wouldn't be what it is today if I wrote it in college versus me writing it now. And that's kind of how that book kind of came to life, is how I put my life experiences into it. And what you wouldn't imagine what a plot it creates. I mean, through editing processes and writing books, you reread your book like 50 times. You know what I mean? And every time I read it, I got excited every time. I was like, that's me. That's me. I can't believe I wrote that. I can't believe that I was driven to write that into this character to see this. So that's kind of how that manifested.
That is amazing. Did you find that writing it was really helpful and kind of therapeutic?
Yes, because I couldn't express my emotions with my parents growing up. I basically started writing at a young age because that's how I exposed. So I would write a diary, or I write short stories, or I would write poetry. And then I was asked to read at school poems, and then I would draw and sketch. So I got really artistic. And so I knew that I had this talent. I knew I had a talent for speaking. I knew I had a talent for expression. And I knew I had a way. Someone told me, you have a gift for gab, and I think I don't think you realize this. gift, at all, like whatsoever. You could communicate to someone, how people that work make it make sense. You do that very well, incredibly well. So I think just it just kind of just grew and blossomed, and it just took me time to actually take that leap and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this book. I had no intention of writing this book and having it be about my at all. I was just writing a fantasy book um, of a story that I wanted to tell that I don't think I read in other books. So I was writing in a way that I was missing the feeling that I was when I was reading other books. I got all the adventure, but I got no emotional connection to the characters.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write this book this way. And then I was writing it, I was like, let me put me in these characters, in each one of these characters. And let me show that. And so that's what I did.
And that book is book 1 in the Chosen Path series. It's called Balance of Power. How did you come up with this title?
So, so it went through a couple iterations, but it's about the balance of societal, how society imposes certain influences on us, where it ends up basically changing who we are. And so it's basically similar, a scale, right? And you have a scale of gifted individuals and a scale of greed. And so it's one is the power, there's power in both. And so it's tipping the scales of basically those who are gifted and those who are greed, and which one is going to win over. And you have to read the story because you never know.
And since this is book 1, how many books do you have planned out for the series?
So here's the thing. I had 3, and on my YouTube channel, when I was recapping this experience of my book launch, my first book launch, I was like really excited. I was like doing a whole video about just how excited I was about this release and the experiences I had doing that. And I said, I said, I only plan this series to be 3 books long, but I can see book 4 and then on, because now I'm thinking generationally, right? Because remember what I said? My parents were raising me based off of what they experienced in their generation.
Yeah.
They weren't raising me for the generation I was going into. And so I parent my kids in the generation that they're in by taking some of the lessons that I've learned, but morphing them so that they're more applicable to the life that they're in and it's beneficial to them, right? And that's what I kind of started thinking about. I was like, okay, I can add a generational aspect to this. So maybe 4, 5, 6, I don't know.
I get excited just hearing this because I can see the passion when you're talking about it. I love this about you. I just think it's just so cool. And you mentioned earlier that you became an introvert because of everything that had happened. Were you originally an extrovert?
Yes, I was. I have all the stories. I had all the stories, everything. My mom would say, "You knew who you were at a young age. She said, I know what they say about kids having this level of discernment, and when you didn't like anyone, you were very abrupt about it. Like you were just you knew, and you did not let that person cross your barriers. You had a funny aspect about you. We would go to your schools and your teachers would rave about you and how you got along with the different kids and everything. And I hear all these stories and I'm like, God, I'm not that girl who you guys are describing at all, like at all. So I'm finding my way through career coaching that and when I speak, so how I'm speaking to you now, I don't know if you can tell, I don't appear as an introvert.
Right.
Okay, well, when I speak and I present and I teach, you can't tell that. So it's just when I'm in my personal space, around my family and my kids, I like to stay there because that's where it's safe, in my opinion. So that's how it works.
That totally makes sense. I'm exactly the same way. I was totally an extrovert as a child, and I'm really good at faking it now.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, we hide it so well. I'm so
Absolutely.
serious. I joke about this, but it's interesting because you know how we have folks who have these coming out stories, and one of my godbrother, who was very near and dear to my heart, um, he had ended up recently coming out and how difficult it was, and I was like, you know, I knew like a long time ago that was your story, but that's what's interesting is that we're better at hiding that than, you know, maybe those who are struggling with their sexuality. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've talked to with my podcast. They're like, I had no idea. And I'm like, good, good. Like, I don't want to wear this billboard saying that I went through all this. I have panic disorder. I have all of this other stuff, you know? So,
Right.
yeah, we do a good job. You know,
Absolutely. And
give
you
us an
never can
offer.
tell what somebody's story is just by looking at them.
Never. Mm-mm. No.
Yeah. And we have all these preconceived ideas of what these things should look like. And we don't look
Yes.
like those things. We don't look like the people that they have in their mind as what that person is supposed to be.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, should I look like some kind of crackhead or something? I don't. I mean, you know, like I don't. You know.
Girl, I go through the same thing as a survivor of trafficking. People say, who rescued you? How old were you? Where's your tattoos? Nope. Nope. Let me just start at the
Yeah.
beginning and say, nope.
Yeah. And I like they say, thank God we don't look like what we've been through. That's
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
great blessing. Great blessing.
Absolutely. He took care of us.
Yes. Yes.
So, and speaking of taking care, other than writing the book, what helped you to heal from the past?
So okay. So I'll tell you this. So, and I need to do a podcast episode on this, but I remember when I told you I was struggling with my faith because of the because my body started rejecting alcohol. I could no longer cope with that. And, you know, obviously there's so many other ways you can go and find ways to cope with that with drugs. I didn't do that. But I wavered with my faith. And so when that happened, I didn't really realize that I was doing this, but I had planned my suicide. Okay. And here's what's interesting. I thought it was going to be at 23 because I thought for some reason I was going to be married at 23. And then it's like, oh, okay, let's dissect that a little bit. Why did I want to wait till after I got married? And well, because my dad always talked about walking me down the aisle. That was his biggest thing. And I felt I didn't want to take that from him. So I was kind of like, okay, once I do that, get married, he walks me down the aisle, I have finished. I have done my life. I have done my work. I have done whatever I was put here for. And unfortunately, you know, I married the love of my life, and I remember telling him, "You weren't going to get 2 months with me." I was done. I was literally done. Well, guess what happened? The wedding night, I got pregnant with my son, and so after that, I was like, "Well, I can't do it." And then I had my son, and when you, I don't know how people can treat their kids a certain way because when I held my son in my hands, this was a love that I had never felt in my life. Okay. I will die for this child. You know, it was like this child will get everything from me. And then I had two more after that. And I just live for them. I live for them. Like I can't go because they need me. And now I found a new purpose in not only being a mother, but raising like educated people who are going to do great things in this world. I cannot tell you how much they're going to give. I can't wait to see what they're going to do. And that is what saved me. That is what brought me out of that depressive state. You know, I had these bouts here and there, you know, but my son, my youngest, he's 8. And I remember laying in the bed one night and I was just really depressed for whatever reason. It could be anything. I don't know. The groceries didn't get delivered on time. I don't know. It was something like that. And he came into my room and he said, "Hey, Mom." And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, and my husband was traveling at the time, so he wasn't there. He said, "I'm going to sleep with you tonight," my 8-year-old. And I go, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Okay, come on." You know, I mean, he knew I needed him. And every one of my kids, when they see me in certain moods, they come to me and they fulfill me in the gap that I'm feeling, that void that I feel. So they literally saved my life. And that's what's brought me out of that state.
And you weren't
It's a
even
great
planning on
question.
being a mother.
No, no. I As a child, I did. I wanted 6 kids. I had this whole thing, but then as stuff started happening to me, I was like, I don't even think I could, I don't think I can handle this. So yeah,
Yeah. Wow. I love your kids for what they've done for you.
thank you so much. I love them
How old are
too.
they now?
My youngest is 8. My daughter, he's a boy. My daughter is 14, and my oldest son, he's 16. He's getting ready to be 17. I'm like, bruh, driver's license. You gotta do some grocery runs and stuff. Gotta help mom out.
Oh my gosh. They're getting big. Oh my
Yes,
gosh. And
yes,
you're still married to the same man after all these years, even though when you got married, you were completely heartbroken about life in general.
yes,
Has it
yeah.
been hard for you guys to be able to hold your relationship together through the hard stuff of the healing, or was that easy?
No, it was very difficult because he had his own trauma that he has to deal with. He hasn't yet, and it's taking him a moment. And what ends up happening is that clashes with communication. And so, like I said, I was plagued with, I've been diagnosed with PTSD and panic disorder. So when I go into panic attacks, he's not doing anything because he's also emotionally withdrawn. He's a very stoic man. And I know he loves me. And I'll tell you how I know this, but he just, didn't do anything. And so I was literally on my own. And that was a big struggle because I'm like, you're doing the same thing that my parents did to me. You're supposed to be my life partner. You're supposed to be there for me through thick and thin and all this other stuff. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, you could start with a hug. Can we do that? Because you're good at initiating other things intimately. You know what I mean? So I don't know. This is nothing different. Um, but one thing when we were like engaged, I said, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how much?" He's like a lot. And I was like, "No, like, tell me exactly." And he goes, if it was a choice between you or me going to heaven, you would go.
Oh,
So I know he loves me. I know he loves me. It's just we have to figure out communication and we have to heal from our own past traumas before we can really get there, you know?
right.
Yeah.
And getting into difficult conversations is hard enough for people that haven't been through trauma. But after going through anything traumatic, it's always going to completely change your brain.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
absolutely love that you guys are working together to make this happen, though. Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have grown up in a society where everything is disposable, from the cups and plates to the relationships in our lives. And you haven't
Mm.
treated it that way. And that deserves so much respect and admiration. It's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So kind of you.
Well, it has come to that point where I have to ask my final question. Well, final two questions, but they are my favorite questions ever. And the
Mhm.
first one is, how do you celebrate your wins in life?
Shoot, that's a good question.
Wait till you hear the
I,
last one.
you know, um, I think I kind of just sit back and I don't know. I think I just kind of sit back and I look at and reflect on where I was and where I came to be. And um, this isn't something where you go and like go to dinner or something like that, or go and treat yourself for a massage, because I just do that on a regular. Uh, but I celebrate my wins by um, giving myself credit. And I do that, and I literally like look in the mirror and say, "You did this. You did this. You went through something, and this is something that you're gonna, not only that, you're gonna be more than what this is. This is just a temporary stop for you. Okay, this is just one win. You're going to be there for more. Believe that." And I look at myself in my mirror and say that over and over again, because it has to be constant. You know what I mean? Like, you have to
Yeah.
constantly say that, because it's just once, it's just not enough. I think that's the way. I mean, that's the best way I could think of how I celebrate them. I know I got to get better at that, because I'm working with my therapy on it. She's always telling me do some self-care and stuff like that. So, but that's my biggest thing. I don't want to go out and splurge money or anything like that, but I really want to mentally and emotionally give back to myself.
And it's so much healthier than my way of just downing a pint of ice cream. So, what is one thing that you love about yourself that's not related to your physical appearance?
Oh, that was a good one, because I was going to say that. Okay. Um, what I love about myself is I love people, uh, generally. I can see a lot of good in a lot of people. And I try to make sure that they look, when I interact with them, that they don't see judgment. They see genuine sincerity. And that is within my own family, because as you can see, I'm fair skinned. Okay. And in my family, there are some that are really dark skinned, and they can have a certain level of concern, if you will, that I might be looking down on them or anything like that. And I make sure that I always look at them and tell them, I love you. I love you. I spend time with them, talking with them, and um, celebrating their achievements, and telling them that I look up to you. Like, you are my big cousin, right? Despite what I do, or whatever else, I look up to you guys. And that's something that I give back to people that I work with, because I think positive feedback to anyone, they don't know that unless you tell them. And that's the one thing that I got from like an ex-business partner of mine. She used to say, "I appreciate you." And I was like, one, I don't hear that enough. And I know if I don't hear it, a lot more people don't. So every time I talk to anybody, the last thing that I say before I get off that phone is, "I appreciate you." That's what I get back.
If you've enjoyed tonight's episode, please make sure you check out the episode description. You'll find links there on how you can learn more about this guest, links to connect with them on social media, and how to support the podcast. Remember, I don't get paid to do this. My boss is a bit tight fisted, but I can say that. I work for myself.